Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate Hilario from the IST Digital team. Before we start, may I know if you can hear me well? Please let me know in the chat box. There you go. For us to begin, I'll read the reminders of the event this afternoon. Please refer to your screen. So please work in an environment where background noises can be muffled at the very least. Please use the chat box if you have any concerns during the webinar. During the Q&A portion, please type your question in the Q&A window. Be also attentive and avoid distractions. If you're facing any technical difficulties with Zoom, please log out and log back in again. If you would like a certificate of attendance, please make sure to stay until the end of the webinar to answer the post-event evaluation form, which will be posted at the end of the event. To get in touch with our speaker after the webinar or with CRC and CRC's consultants and experts, please email us through crc@uap.asia. To start our webinar, let me call on our host this afternoon, Mr. Remy De Leon from the Center for Research and Communication.
Hello there, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Kate. We're very glad to welcome you today for another IGNITE Asia-Pacific event, this time entitled Scaling Up Philippine Agribusiness by Integrating Smallholder Farms. Now, if you're anything like me who spent his childhood around farms, you know the frustration of watching farmers try to achieve efficient farm production when they only have very small farm lot sizes. You know what? Growing up, this seemed like a problem with no solution in sight. So it's my unique privilege to be your host today, discussing possible solutions to the problem of low production and low productivity in smallholder farms. And if I may add a personal note, thank you very much for your interest and thank you for joining us. Our Ignite Asia Pacific event today is organized by the Center for Research and Communication and is powered by the UANP Department of Information Science and Technology. My name is Remy De Leon, and I'm the Communication Officer for Research at CRC. As you can see, very happy to be your host today. Now, let's just have one last check to see if our audio is okay. Could folks please tell me through the chat box if you can hear me all right? Yes, thank you very much. We are good to go. Let's get the ball rolling with some audience participation, shall we? May we request that the participants answer the poll questions that are popping up on your screens right about now. All right. That looks like it's all right for our poll. Now, if you want to know when the next CRC events are coming up and also enjoy the great content that we develop here at CRC, which is the research and consultancy link to Philippine business opportunities, well, then head on over to our social media accounts and the social media accounts of our partners, which are now flashing on your screen. Uh, in fact, I think, yes, I know we have another agribusiness themed event happening on the 25th. That's Thursday next week. But I'll tell you the details of that event after we hear from our speakers because we don't want to distract you, do we? Uh, Again, if you want to get in touch with CRC's experts and consultants, do send your emails to us through crc@uap.asia. That's crc@uap.asia. Now, we're off to the core of our discussions for the day. Uh, our first speaker today doesn't really need any introductions. One of the founders of CRC, our speaker, obtained his PhD in economics from Harvard University, having obtained his undergraduate degrees at De La Salle, where he was awarded summa cum laude in both the humanities and in commerce. He became the first dean of the CRC College of Arts and Sciences, which eventually evolved into the University of Asia and the Pacific. He was the Dean of the School of Economics of CRC and UANP for some 20 years. He sits on the boards of numerous national and multinational corporations. Well known for his books on economics, management, and values education, he has served five governments in the area of investment promotion and industrial policy formulation. Nowadays, he's a constant figure in roadshows and the lecture circuit on several continents, always promoting the Philippines as an investment site, as one of the top emerging economies in the world. Currently, the director for research at the Center for Research and Communication and the holder of the professorial chair for social economics. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Dr. Bernardo Malvar Villegas.
Greetings to all participants in this webinar on how to deal with small holders so that they can balance social justice with productivity and income. First of all, let's establish the premise that there will always be smallholders in Philippine agriculture. And this will be explained by a very important provision in the Philippine Constitution of 1987. I'd like to read this provision so that we are reminded about the reason why we have to always deal with how to help smallholders balance justice with productivity. It says, the state shall by law undertake an agrarian reform program founded on the right of farmers and regular farm workers who are landless to own directly or collectively the lands they till, or in the case of other farm workers, to receive a just share of the fruits thereof. To this end, the state shall encourage and undertake the just distribution of all agricultural lands, subject to such priorities and reasonable retention limits as the Congress may prescribe, taking into account ecological, developmental, or equity considerations, and subject to the payment of just compensation. In determining retention limits, the state shall respect the rights of small landowners. The state shall further provide incentives for voluntary land sharing. There are other important provisions on this article entitled Agrarian and Natural Resources Reform, and I would encourage all of you to go back to the Philippine Constitution and read very closely this provision. So we never forget that the Grand Reform Program that was instituted in the past was a demand of social justice. However, the problem was our state was not as effective as our neighboring countries in following through the distribution of land to smallholders. The state should have, as Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, even Korea, that is not exactly an agricultural country, as they were able to make sure that once they attained the objective of social justice and having smallholders in their agricultural sector, they were able to spend a lot of the resources in endowing the smallholders with all the infrastructures and services that they needed to attain productivity and higher incomes. I refer, for example, to farm-to-market roads, irrigation systems, post-harvest facilities, agricultural extension services, and we need not really reinvent the wheel. Just take a look at the experiences of these countries I mentioned, and the most dramatic recently was Vietnam. Let me just remind you how Vietnam surpassed us in GDP per capita last year, among other reasons, because they did a wonderful job in helping their farmers be productive. I'm always impressed when I think of how 10 years ago, Vietnam was not even a major player in coffee production because their state was very effective in helping their small farmers in coffee farming to be productive through all the infrastructure support. Now, Vietnam has actually surpassed Brazil as the #1 coffee exporter in the world. And that encourages me that if, after we digest all the information that will be given during this webinar, if we're able to also diversify a lot of our lands, especially in the coconut region, into coffee farming, we can follow the example of Vietnam in being a major producer of coffee, not only for our 110 million consumers in this country, but for many other countries in the world, especially our Northeast Asian neighbor. Now, let me first say that in rice farming, small holders can be highly productive, even if farmers continue to retain ownership and management of their respective farms. The technology in rice farming, at least in tropical climates like Southeast Asia, and you can see that in Vietnam and Thailand, there are still many smallholders in rice, is such that you don't need consolidation of ownership and management in rice. As long as there are, first of all, strong state support in such infrastructures that I already mentioned, farm-to-market roads, irrigation systems, post-harvest. For example, when you witness this anomaly, and I just witnessed it again in a recent trip to Tarlac, that our rice farmers are still drying their palay on the cemented road in front of them, this is a real scandal. That shows how terrible was the negligence in the past, that we have not been able to help our small farmers even improve their technology in drying their palay through state help or through precisely what smallholders in rice farming in the more productive Southeast Asian countries have been able to do through cooperatives. Cooperatives in irrigation, cooperatives in using some appropriate technology, in using machines for farming, And it doesn't have to be the huge combines that you see in the West. There can be a proper technology of hand tractors and so on and so forth, but they can actually be owned collectively by cooperatives, not to mention cooperatives in marketing, so that the rice farmers are at the mercy of the middlemen. So all of this is possible in rice farming. You can continue to have a lot of rice farms owned and managed by smallholders, as long as, and I'm sure the next speaker, Mr. Villegas, will be able to give us very, very specific examples of how these cooperatives can help small farmers. First of all, in also being able to have multiple cropping in order to have diversified crops that can supplement their income from rice, some high value vegetables, and so on and so forth. All of these things are possible if the smallholders in rice are able to organize cooperatives in which they can achieve economies of scale without surrendering the ownership and management of their farms. Now, the other crop that is very widespread. In fact, I'd like to remind you that rice accounts for 4.4 million hectares of our 14.1 million hectares of agricultural land. That's the largest share. While coconut accounts for 3.6 million of the 14.1 million hectares. So after rice, the second crop in which we need to improve productivity in a significant way is coconut. It is in coconut that we should encourage consolidation, if not of ownership, at least of management. I now am thinking of the way that Malaysia was able to become a world power in palm oil production, because more than 50 years ago, in the 1980s, and I think Dr. Rolando D was very much part of this decision of the Malaysian government to decide that Malaysia will not achieve 100% self-sufficiency in rice production, because they saw that it didn't make sense to produce rice since it did not have a competitive advantage compared to Vietnam and Thailand that had unlimited water. As you very well know, the rivers there are like oceans. And we can say the same thing about the Philippines. That is exactly the rationale behind rice tariffication. We should have done what Malaysia did several decades ago, when they said, we will only be, say, 70% self-sufficient in rice, and we will import the rest from our much more productive neighbors. What did they do with their land? They said, we are more competitive in palm oil and in rubber. And so what we earn in these very productive sectors, we will use to import rice. And that is part of the reason why we have this rice tariffication program, to encourage more and more rice farmers to really shift to other higher value crops. There will always be rice farmers. Whether we will say 70% or 80% will always be produced by Filipino rice farmers, but not this objective we've had for so many decades, 100% self-sufficiency. That was not rational. Now, we can now focus on what the coconut farmers should be doing. The coconut farmers should be following the model of the Malaysians when they decided to focus on palm oil. They encouraged a lot of their landowners, small landowners, to either lease their land to a big corporation, whether it's Sam Darby, Guthrie, or a state enterprise, so that this big corporation will take care of managing thousands of hectares together. The farmers continued owning the farms, but they leased them to this large corporation. And this large corporation transferred technology, inputs, management to the smallholders, and many of members of their families work for the large corporation as workers. And if you go to Malaysia, you will see exactly how successful this model was. It's called nucleus estate farming. And within these vast areas managed by the large corporations in tandem with the smallholders who continued, I repeat, the ownership, but they leased their land to the big corporation. You will see also how they were able to modernize the rural areas by putting up beautiful townships, housing for the farmers, all types of resources, schools, commercial centers, and so on and so forth. That is the dream I have for these large coconut plantations in Quezon, in Bicol, in Mindanao, where you can have small holders among the coconut farmers leasing their lands to large corporations. And I can already cite two concrete examples. There is one corporation in Misamis Oriental that is actually trying to do this. Another one corporation in Brooks Point that is doing the same thing, trying to consolidate thousands of hectares of land belonging to small farmers and applying in one way or another, it's not an exact copy, the nucleus estate system. And this enabled these two corporations to come out with much more valuable outputs in coconut. Not copra or coconut oil, which are the lowest value, but you have coconut water, coconut sugar, all the types of food products, even whole coconut exports, for example, to Taiwan. Virgin coconut oil, nata de coco, milk. As you very well know, coconut water is a highly desired product of Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, all over the world because it's a health product. All these are possible if you have a large corporation working in tandem with the small farmers, diversifying out of copra, coconut oil, and even desiccated coconut. And so if this model of these two corporations that are already existing in Misamis Oriental and Brooks Point, Palawan, can be replicated in so many places where coconut is the predominant produce, then we can have really hundreds of thousands of coconut farmers to be richer, and we will be able to really attain the objective of inclusive growth. Now, there is the question of how, in addition to the big areas devoted to rice and coconut, we can help other people make money in high value agricultural produce in areas very close to the urban agglomerations, like the Metro Manila area, like what Calabar Zone, especially Batangas City, is becoming more and more urbanized, like the Central Luzon area, Subic, the so-called Pampanga Triangle, Angeles, San Fernando, Clark, and Subic. So more and more, we will have an alternative to Metro Manila that will become more and more urbanized. Now, another very important reform that we should introduce in business practices is to encourage people from the urban areas, which mean middle income families, to go into urban farming. Many of the landholders in the past, in Batangas, in Cavite, in Pampanga, in Bulacan, a good number of them were able to retain, as was mentioned in what I cited, some hectares of land. And some of them right now are still agricultural. They have not been totally converted into commercial, residential, or industrial areas, which can address the problem of food security, especially as regards high value crops, whether they be vegetables, fruits, and livestock. I think we should encourage a lot of what we can call urban gardening, but this will not be achieved by, excuse me, encouraging poor farmers to get into these businesses full scale. When we talk about high value farming in rice and coconut, incidentally, coconut is perfect for intercropping with such high value crops as coffee and cacao, and that is why I refer to the nucleus estate system of either intercropping with coconut or actually completely cutting down the coconut trees and converting them into cacao plantation, coffee plantation. For example, I'm glad to know that Kennymer, one of the largest cacao chocolate producers in the world, has already acquired thousands of hectares in Palawan. As you know, our success stories in these high value crops are banana and pineapples. We have done it already. We are a power in banana and pineapple exports to our Northeast Asian neighbors. We can replicate the success story in many other high-value crops, avocado, durian, mangoes, name it, if we are able to achieve consolidation to the nucleus estate system, following what the people who invested in bananas and pineapples were able to do decades ago. But now I'm referring to urban gardening, which will address the problem of a lot of agricultural lands still existing in what we call urban areas, partly rural and partly urban. And a lot of them still belong to middle-income families, to encourage some members of these middle-income families to really become farmers, to really attract young people from the middle class to go into the production of papaya, of all types of vegetables or livestock. For example, I'm very proud of the fact that in my hometown, Santo Tomas, a partnership of Jollibee with a big commodities international company is going to be the biggest poultry producer in Southeast Asia. And that definitely is going to address our food security challenge. One positive result of the pandemic that I celebrate is that we have realized how important food security is. Not only we, China is the number one country that is very nervous about its future because it will have to import a lot of high value products once the right now they have about 700 million middle class people. But little by little, the other 700 billion who are still poor will acquire higher incomes. Can you just imagine the amount of high value products they need? And they're definitely looking towards Southeast Asia. And Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia are already taking advantage of this big demand in China. We can also do that if we're able to address our own food security problem. And the other area that I am suggesting is to get more and more of our young people from the middle class converting small areas, it could be as small as 1,000 square meters, into high value agricultural production close to the city. And in order to do that, and I'm sure the next speaker will address that because it's a project, we must put up technical training programs for these middle class professionals, precisely getting them to acquire the skills of growing, that we just mentioned specifically, red papaya, lettuce, cabbage, eggplants, and so on and so forth. The demand for which will increase significantly as we become an upper middle income economy. And so my last proposition is let us address this shortage of professionals who will know how to grow high value crops by putting up what we can call a dual system, study and work, by putting up training institutes that I'm sure will be described by my colleague, Mr. Villegas. Thank you very much, and I hope these random thoughts I have given you some ideas about how we can help smallholders integrate their farms one way or the other to these models, cooperatives, nucleus estate, co-operatives, as Land Bank call them, which is really nucleus estate, and urban gardening. So we will solve not only our own problem of food security, but we can make agricultural exports a major contributor to our international trade. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Villegas. That was certainly a lot of insights that we have. Very interesting strategies for creating economies of scale in smaller holder farms, whether through the nucleus estate system or through cooperatives or through cooperatives. Dr. Villegas has certainly given us a lot to think about. We'll be moving on to our next speaker in a while, of course. But before we get to that, let's see the results of our poll from earlier. I think they're ready. Yeah, I see that we have a lot of people here who are from agribusiness marketing, but also a lot of people who are into farm production and oh, yeah, an interesting number of people also in agriculture and agribusiness policy. Most of us are from Luzon, and we see a bunch of people here from elsewhere in Southeast Asia and also in Australia, New Zealand, or Oceania. All right, let's move on to our next speaker. Now, if anybody in the audience has questions for Dr. Villegas, you may send it to the Q&A feature on your Zoom. but we'll attend to it during the open forum. In the meantime, uh, Mr. Pablito M. Villegas, Master of Science, is a freelance international consultant on agricultural economics, supply, and value chain and enterprise development and agro-industrial business management with a specialization in food security, inclusive growth, agro-industrial development, and inclusive agribusiness management. He has worked in more than 20 developing countries, but nowadays he's more of a practicing organic agroforest and agroecological agriculturist. He's a smallholder coconut-based agroforestry farmer, and he is the owner-operator of Villegas Organic and Hobby Ecotourism Farms, the VOHO Ecotourism Farm Corporation, and the Sustainable Agriculture and Entrepreneurship Learning Center in Malvar, Batangas. Uh, Concurrently, he is the president and CEO of VOHO Ecotourism Farm Corporation. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Pablito Pabs Malabanan Villegas.
Gentlemen and ladies, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. So I will be presenting the agri-fishery and ecotourism business model for food security and poverty reduction. Next slide, please. So where are we now? So I will give you a very, not too good situation analysis. Foremost is the worsening rural and urban poverty, food insecurity, malnutrition, and inhumane settlements, improper housing for the poor. The low level of household and community food security, because to differentiate from the national food security, the prevalence of idle lands and bodies of water, and its non-utilization for agri-fishery and ecotourism development. The chaotic and highly exploitative and oppressive agricultural trade. Basically, most of them are anti-farmer, anti-consumer, as you can see now, as the way the trading aspects of rice, corn, hogs, or pork, poultry, and other commodities, which practically victimize the farmers, and with as well as the consumer, with the importers, getting most of the benefit of the trading business. And another serious issue is the conversion of prime agricultural lands into real estate, housing, and mixed use at the expense of agriculture and rural development. Next, please. The import-dependent food security, that's another what I told you, pro-importer, pro-consumer in a way, but mainly pro-businessman, the one who is handling all these food security imports that we are doing now in the country. And another thing is the phasing out of agrarian reform program. But hopefully, I am optimistic that there are two pathways where we can go. The consolidation of farms into big, agribusiness units, and the micro farm development that I will focus my discussion today. So you also have the unbalanced rural-urban development and more worsening climate change. Unavailability of small farms due to constraints, unavailability. I think that's unprofitability of small farms, due to constraints relating to limited access to technology, financing, market, and management systems. And of course, a new look, how to decongest Metro Manila, and also an anti-COVID-19 program, the Balik Probinsya, Bagong Pag-asa program of the Duterte administration. Next, please. So, what with respect to micro-farming, what is our dreams or what are our dreams on this? How do we see the future? So the vision that I would like to pose is how to engaging in micro-farming technology and investment. So it's a technology investment in hobby, organic, agroforestry agriculture, and climate resiliency. This is a pathway where micro-farming could go. very well. And underneath, I would like to showcase, you know, in terms of immediate objectives, income enhancing and sustainable on farm. What can we can do on the farm, off farm, outside the farm? What agricultural activities we can do? Then on farm technologies, with livelihood and employment opportunities that abound, in the countryside, given the rural urban interfacing that's now going on in the countryside, and to provide, you know, agriculture development must be accompanied by decent, humane housing with micro agri-eco farm tourism, because these are major drivers of growth. And most importantly, to liberate the young and aging farmers from poverty and food health insecurity amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, please. So how do we get there? How do we get there? What strategic interventions are needed? So under my model, the business model, you are dealing with micro farm subdivision, meaning we subdivide small to medium scale farms, maybe from 1 hectare, as small as 1 hectare to 10 hectare or even 20 or larger hectareage, into micro farming business. And I call this the micro farming business model. Then part of the subdivision of this area, just like you and you are in a housing subdivision, is the parceling or the parcellary mapping of these small farms to a minimum of 250, is as small as 250 square meter to 500 or 1,000. But I would prepare about 500 to 1,000 homesteads with 50 square meter or more or less devoted to decent and human housing. Next, please. And then number two, after you have done the parcellary mapping into sizes that will be suitable, appropriate for the area, we need to establish simultaneously micro and communal cooperative farms. So this will be an interface so that between micro farming and your communal cooperative farming, so that we can showcase some economies of scale, and where we can, come up with a volume, establishing cooperative, communal cooperative farms, and with shared services facilities, maybe as small as 1,000 to 2,000 square meter, maybe a quarter of a hectare will be more suitable for cooperative farming and capacity building of individual market micro farmers. So this will be a simultaneous, capacity building, training, and knowledge and skill formation, so that we can make sure that the model will be able to transform itself into business, into viable business units. And therefore, under this, we need also, because these are smallholder development now, where the poorest of the poor will have to have access to, in terms of securing the Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade Industry, DOST, and other maybe tourism, shared services facility, and development grants. No, so this is very important, so that we can showcase, some of these surefire technologies that will make a difference. And finally, establishing cooperative organization and management under informed consent. They should be well informed, they should be well educated, and shared values management. Next, please. After this, we will continue to showcase now, put on the ground, showcase the development of on-farm, off-farm, non-farm enterprise and employment creation. Example of on-farm is because we are near Metro Manila and we are situated in Batangas, we can focus on high-value vegetables, lettuce, a lot of these green leafy vegetables, what you call the the Ilocano, the pakbet vegetables, the vegetable that we use for making chop suey, and then the off farm, meaning maybe integration to to livestock, poultry, goats, chicken, including processing, value-added processing. Right now, we are doing value-added processing on mushroom under a precision environment technology. and non-farm employment, because at the moment, part of this activity will be building construction. So the farmers themselves under this, if you incorporate housing, will have employment opportunities or in terms of building and construction, and these are major employment generation or creation, as well as maybe other a lot. We are now near Calabarzon, we are near. Agro-industrial park. So there will be a lot of employment. So a family of 6 will be able to combine all these enterprises, and on top of, on the base of this, they will be able to earn. So now we talk of an aggregate family income. So family-based farming, family-based employment, where they can have at least 15,000 per month over a year or 2 period, but mainly coming from on-farm and off-farm. So bonus na yung non-farm, etc. So that the family will be able to not only to survive, but to afford a decent housing facility. And under this methodology, we will be able to showcase, as we have been doing now, pre-production technologies. We call it the input aggregates. What are needed? These are the organic input concoctions, organic fertilizer, vermicomposting, a lot of these concoctions that we do in order, sprayables that we do in the farm, as well as what are the production technologies, the state-of-the-art production technologies generated by universities, generated by practitioners, and then the post-harvest handling and processing technologies. So in all, we have now a value chain approach to the application of appropriate technologies in the farming communities. So this will involve, say, for example, high-value crops, poultry livestock, fish, aquaculture farming, home and community-based food processing, as well as non-farm employment in the construction industries, in the, in the industrial parks, or any other, activities that are more or less predominantly occurring in the area. And hopefully, over a period of 2 to 3 years, the progressive build-up of 30,000 to 40,000 income per month among these micro farmers, micro farm families. Next slide, please. And finally, we will be accessing research and development and extension linkages to demonstrate controlled environment or precision agriculture technologies in the cooperative communal farms for replication in the micro farms. No? And in here, force, the micro farmers and the labor force and the family, in particular the women, will organize themselves into a functional and value cooperative entity. So that is the second important intervention that will happening. The third one will delve on, next please, slide please, on the provision of decent and humane housing and ecotourism sites and services. In here, we would like to see to it that your housing will be linked up with your ecotourism, services, or ecotourism promotion. And this will mean the provision of individual family housing in the 50 square home lot with steel framing concrete materials laced with locally available indigenous housing materials, anaho leaves, or possibly timber, bamboo, woods, bricks. No, we have beautiful bricks in the Philippines, and if we can use this as housing materials, reduce its cost of production. So this will complement very well with the with the hollow blocks, no? So, and it look beautiful. Sawali and the simultaneous showcase of cultural and eco-farm tourism. So that will be linked, a beautiful home in an eco-farming, situation, so that we can promote farm tourism at the same time. The IAPRO completed the housing design of a 2-story unit with 18 square meter loft, with total area of about 60 square meter ground floor. But in here, I will only have about 12 meters square for kitchen storage areas, toilet and bath, sewage and plumbing. And 18 square meter of open space, no, so that this can be an area for your enterprise setting or enterprise establishment, whatever enterprise, home-based enterprise or even non-farm enterprise that can be set up on an 18 square area at the in Batangas we call it the silong of the bahay, no. And then the second floor will be a 30 square meter for living room, dining, bathrooms, the loft area for sleeping quarters. It can be for boarders and homestay guests, and as well as tourists. Next, please. Ang vision at the 60 under present values, no, present housing costs, at 14,000 per square meter, I think we can, even contractors will have already a reasonable profit, no, on this. That will cost around 840,000. And they will have only a monthly high side amortization of about 8,506 for 15 years. But this can be significantly reduced, even at 8.5%. That can be reduced to 67, and the payment can be increased. So I think this can be done, amortized around the vicinity of 5,000 pesos a month. And this individual housing unit will be compliant with the COVID-19 safety protocols, with the provision of social distancing and isolation areas within the house itself and within the communal farm, building a hall, something like that. Next, the next strategic intervention, next slide please, is on utilizing internet and digital technology. So we call this the Internet of Things technology that will be developed with operational application in handling products and services. We call it the product flow. Financial products and services, the financial flow, information, education, and communications, the information flow. So when you are able to track this down and link it up with internet and digital technology, then you will see that the whole process, no, of a circular flow of within a local community can be had. And this will trigger very much the accelerated development of the project site or development area. And along with this, we will be able to generate economies of scale, can be secured by a bulk production or procurement of pre-production inputs or the inputs needed, as well as indirect marketing, and now digitalized pooled marketing of each microfarm and communal produce and processed products, because we will have also a so the next step here is how do we do it? How do we do it in terms of organizing it? Next, please. So we will call this now under the category of the venture, agribusiness venture modalities in micro and communal cooperative farming implementation. So I have prepared here about four approaches. The first one is what I call the investor-entrepreneur. For example, that's me. That's what I'm doing now. I have an existing farm size, say 2 hectare, 3 hectare, that now I'm developing. And I now can develop this in the partnership with DA, DTI, DOST, and Pag-ibig funds under the private sector, private-public partnership scheme. Number 2, model is an investor, social entrepreneur. So who has now the farm estate development technology and expertise and housing, ecotourism, and internet-based information system with a farm development experience. We will now enter into joint venture with a third-party farm landowner under profit sharing arrangements based on the value added of land and assets being invested in it. So we will be able to agree on sharing arrangement given the risk, development investment that we put into the enterprise and the profits or business surpluses that we will generate from it. So this is the second model. The third one, next please, is the social entrepreneur, the landowner itself, no, join to joint venture with a financier. So this is now a financial entity who will be investing in our micro communal farming business model, and as an angel investor or as a venture capitalist, everybody knows how this is working in a micro communal farm estate development. So the whole project study, the business plan will be laid out, and this will be very, very attractive to the angel investor because the return on investment here with housing and the integration with tourism, farm tourism, will generate a lot of businesses on the side that will result in optimizing, investment income from the whole enterprise. And of course, part of this will be the accessing of grants and sub-financing from government financial institutions, the Land Bank, DBP, Pag-ibig funds, donors, as well as sources of official development assistance. I think Verde is very good at this, and this is something that he can easily bring into this. This, gentleman, is my presentation. Please, last slide, please. So how do we move? The way forward, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, is micro and communal cooperative farming is now a viable rural development pathway to go. So let us join together and engage in micro, and communal cooperative farming as a business model. And there you go. Thanks and good day. Thank you very much. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pabs Villegas. You mentioned agro-tourism, and I think I should add Villegas Organiks as one of the potential places where my wife and I can go to our next vacation. And I'm really looking forward to planting and harvesting and boiling some okra fresh from the farm. That's glorious. Anyway, for those who want to review this material, we'll be making the video available sometime next week. We just have to process it a little bit. But you're going to have to get it from the CRC LinkedIn and Facebook accounts. Just look for Center for Research and Communication, either on LinkedIn or on Facebook, and you'll be able to find us pretty quickly, I think. For those interested in the next CRC event, we're having a bit of an agribusiness month here at CRC. On March 25, that's Thursday, we'll be having the 2021 CRC International Food and Agribusiness Investor Roadshow. That's 2 p.m. on March 25, Thursday. That's particularly meant for those investors who are interested in becoming part of this exciting aspect of the Philippine economy. It's one of the Philippines is one of our top emerging economies in the world, and agriculture is a very significant, very important, and very much growing part of that economy. But yeah, that's on March 25. Right now, we've got a very interesting session on our hands today. We already have a bunch of questions coming in. I'm sure you're very busy trying to figure out how to follow Dr. Villegas and Mr. Villegas. Let's proceed to our open forum. Both Dr. Villegas and Mr. Pabs Villegas are here to answer your questions. Let's start off, I think, with a question that we received. We received a bunch of questions early on through the chat, through the CRC email address, crc@uap.asia. So some of the early ones that came in, I think one of them is this one. From Mylene Castillejos Cabrera from Imperial College in London. What can the development aid sector do to encourage these initiatives? Do you know if any of them are already doing so? Aside from Malaysia, many countries like Israel have systems. Their insight might be helpful. So what can the aid agencies or the UN agencies, etc., do to help? And are any of them already doing it? Maybe this question goes out to both Sir Pabs and Dr. Villegas, if anyone wants to answer.
I can address the question first. Will you allow me to start my video?
There
Okay.
you go.
I think development institutions can do a lot to help address the issue of cooperative farming. The Philippines has not been very successful, really, with a few exceptions, in getting successful cooperatives in farming. You know, we've been talking a lot about our Bayanihan spirit, but really it stops in transferring one nipa hut to another and within a very small community of the extended family. Filipinos are not yet used to the idea of promoting the common good, even of people you don't know personally. We're still so person oriented. And that is why we need a lot of help to be able to transfer into our culture the practices that the Taiwanese perfected very well in cooperative farming, small farms, not to mention the Mondragon model in Spain. After all, we have some commonality with the Spanish culture. But I'm sure all of you know about one of the most successful cooperatives in the world, the Mondragon Cooperative. And Israel also, as was mentioned in the question, has been very successful in developing a cooperative culture. So I would really ask a lot of development aid agencies to pour a lot of both financial and human resources in helping small farm cooperatives to succeed. So that's an area where I think we can use a lot of international aid. The second, and I saw also a question about certain Filipino businessmen getting into appropriate technology, hand tractors. We don't have to go immediately into the combines and large machinery used in the United States. We can definitely benefit from the stage in which Korea, Taiwan, Thailand went through in just transitioning from the Carabao to mechanized approaches to harvesting, to planting, and we can definitely make use of international aid in identifying which of these appropriate technologies in our states of development we should use. I just remember during the time of Marcos, through a certain order from the president, GO 47, some very well-intentioned groups tried to grow rice using 100 hectares, using very large machinery. It was an utter failure because rice farming can still be very productive given the appropriate technology and cooperative farming, even if the farms are still very small and are not necessarily consolidated. And I still remember that attempt at large-scale rice farming somewhere in southern Mindanao. And when the palay was distributed to the consumers, there were great complaints because the palay came with so much stones and dust together with it, which means it was not really appropriate for tropical farming in the rice area. So the second area after cooperatives would be in the field of appropriate technology. And I think Israel and Taiwan can help a lot. So I'm sure Bob's will also have his idea, especially in micro farming. Bob's, would you like?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Villegas. Yes, indeed. What I can share now is our own initiatives, because we are trying to do this in a small way. So this does not, involve too much investment. So we're trying to showcase it where we are now putting together a holistic approach. The problem in the past is so fragmented. Now we try to develop a business package that will be viable, that will be bankable, so to speak. And so even the integration of Internet of Things technology, that I was discussing, can be included there. The inclusion of construction, the inclusion of, say, the shared services facilities that will generate, interest in building, so that farmers will have the opportunity to get off-farm, non-farm income that will tie them over, so that eventually we are also providing them not only food security, health security, but as well as humane housing. So this is the kind of model we are trying to do. But in the past, when I was vice president of Land Bank in the 80s, the first thing that I developed that then was to have a linkage with, say, the World Bank under the small farmer development operations of Land Bank, as well as with the Asian Development Bank, wherein we were able to generate no resources. But the only difference that time is we are able now to develop an infrastructure within the bank, wherein we have practically developed an agrarian sector operation that purely focus its operations on small farmer and ag and
So what's happening shows how
Hello.
important internet is.
Right. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
to bring internet to the rural areas.
Yes, that's a very important part.
Abs-
Maybe for the moment, before we can move on to some of the questions that are on the chat that are directed specifically to Dr. Villegas. Uh, Rather interest. This one was amusing, sir. From Farah Alomadulid. The question is, how can CRC assist our cooperative in terms of production technology in fish pond production? It's aimed at CRC specifically.
CRC? Well, CRC
Yes, sir.
is not a institution that is directly involved. We are a think tank, and we
Uh-huh.
stimulate a lot of thinking from both here and abroad. So don't ask CRC to be itself involved in actual
Mhm.
helping farmers. And we can put you in touch with different institutions. Uh, like, for example, we brought a group of people who were interested in cooperatives to an international tour of the Mondragon system in Spain some years back. We have been very much in touch with Taiwanese technology. In fact, it's one of our very close cooperators here, Arsenio Barcelona, who is in charge of Harvest, which is transferring very many Taiwanese experiences in vegetable and food farming to the Philippines very successfully. This is the way we're able to broker between people who are actually involved in helping farmers. But CRC itself is not an institution that gets involved in cooperative organization.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Next question, I believe.
because of the internet connection. It's good we have
Oh, there we go.
pre-recorded it. So that's all right. But let me just finish it because the whole process now we're trying now to develop, and incidentally with the good brother of Dr. Villegas, the attorney Jose Malbar Villegas, we're trying now to develop a model. This model implement it maybe in Batangas, Western Batangas, where we're trying now to develop it in a 100-hectare area. And maybe this is where some investors, some develop, ODA may be had. But what I was saying is we need only to have this concept of big brother, small brother partnership, like say Jollibee Corporation, San Miguel Corporation, who will partner with us and make these things. I just had a guest here in my farm, and he said his father-in-law has 50 hectares. He does not know what to do there in Mindoro. And maybe that's the kind of partnership that we should develop. If that guy is interested, then we bring in the technology, the micro farming and cooperative farming technology model that I have discussed. And then from there on, we will be able to bring a robust circular economy working within a localized community.
Now, let me just come in here. I was inspired by the remarks of Pops to also mention that there will have to be a role of the government. The government has an indispensable role in helping, for example, replicate the Malaysian nucleus estate system in the Philippines, whether through land bank or other agencies that have to be more professionally and effectively run. Because, for example, the housing solution that PUBS is recommending was done dutifully by federal land um, authorities and other state agencies in Malaysia, where they develop townships together with the Lucas farms and using obviously state money. And if you go to Malaysia, you will be impressed. In the rural areas, they have townships which are as modern as you will find in the urban areas, coexisting with the palm oil plantations. And I think this can be done only if you have large scale help from our government. And this, I'm challenging precisely the state to be very proactive also in what we're talking about. In replicating the Malaysian mucus estate system, there is no substitute for state intervention. Obviously, we can also depend on the San Miguel's, the Nutri-Asia, the Del Monte. We have done it already, but it's about time that our government also can be as effective as the Malaysian government, the Taiwanese government in helping all of these agribusiness development programs that we are talking about. We cannot forever say that the state is inefficient, is ineffective, and therefore we will depend completely on the private sector. I think that mentality has to disappear. We must have an efficient state.
There's a question here from the chat again. What are the high value crops for which these mechanisms are particularly useful? What products should investors focus on that would particularly benefit from the integration of small farms into more integrated systems?
The whole range of high value vegetables, from cabbage to lettuce to eggplants. Think of all the vegetables that people are now saying are more healthy to consume as you graduate from very low income to middle income. And that's going to be inevitable as more and more Filipinos reach the middle income level. Incidentally, the middle income level means a family of five would earn anywhere from 30 to 50,000 pesos. So that's the middle income. And once more and more Filipinos have that range of family income, the demand for rice will tend to decrease and all sorts of carbohydrates, and the demand for vegetables and fruits. So a whole range of fruits, starting with, I mentioned harvest. I'm sure you've heard of red lady papaya. In fact, practically all homes now consume papaya for breakfast because it is one of the most nutritious and as well as healthy fruits. And papaya is not very difficult to grow. And not to mention the more exotic ones like durian, like lanzones, and so on and so forth. These are all amenable to microfarming. Small areas of 1 hectare, 5 hectares. In fact, if you go to Alaminos, Laguna, you will find many very attractive fruit farms that are supplying the Metro Manila area. So, and not to mention, obviously, the whole area of livestock. Livestock can also be done in small farms. In fact, contract farming is the proof that small farmers can go into hogs, into poultry, and so on and so forth. In fact, that project I mentioned of Jollibee, together with Cargill, will depend a lot on contract farming. They will subcontract the growing of chickens to small farms in the Batangas area. And as you know, that can be done also to other types of livestock. It's done in hogs. Hopefully in the future, we will be able to develop goat farming, cattle farming, and so on and so forth. So these are also very amenable to small farms. You don't need the cattle ranches of Australia or the Midwest in the United States to grow cows. We can grow cattle also in small farms if you have the organization.
Okay, so many questions in the chat, and we have very little time. I suppose I should acknowledge the presence of the former provincial veterinarian of La Union, who is here. We also have a bunch of alumni, and we have a bunch of people from uh, various enterprises throughout the Philippines. But we only have time for one more question. This one was emailed in earlier on, and I'm not sure whether it's Dr. Villegas or Mr. Villegas who will be answering it. But Kali Corpus, who joins us with a question from last time as well. How can Filipinos overseas, whether OFWs or second or third generation Filipinos, be involved in this process, especially if they have capital? Is there any preparation that smaller investors from outside the Philippines need uh, in order to be involved?
Okay, I think I already addressed that partly, but first of all, I'm glad the question about overseas workers, because these overseas workers usually are already in the middle income category. I'm sure with all the remittances they send, their families already are at the level of 30 to 50,000 pesos a month. So they have the necessary capital to invest in small scale, high value farming. So they can identify a member of their family who should be encouraged to acquire the necessary skills to go into high value farming. And in fact, in this regard, I think that poor farmers are not really going to be contributing a lot of supply to high value crops, because if they are encouraged to go into high value farming, they don't necessarily have the savings to risk what is needed in high value farming. You need to be middle class to be able to risk money. When we have small farmers to go into ready papaya, vegetables, and so on and so forth, they are only supplement to their main product like rice, coconut, and mostly for home consumption. We should encourage middle class families to be the ones to produce really for the market. And I'm glad that the question was asked about overseas workers, because they're the ones who have the savings that they can risk in high value farming. But they have to identify a member of their family who's here who can be trained. And that's where I think Bob's Villegas and company can help. They should put up a training program where you get children of middle class families to learn in short courses. It doesn't have to be a degree program. It's not a Los Baños school. It can be a 1 month period intensive where they are given classroom instructions on all the various technologies in growing high value crops. And then they actually spend time in a farm like that of Pubs. So it's a work study program. It's patterned after the German system of dual VOC. You study, and as you're studying, you are actually already learning how to grow lettuce, cabbage, how to address pests, what fertilizers to use. And so these are the skills that we have to give to a lot of our young people, and not encourage them to take Bachelor of Science in accounting, finance, and so on and so forth. We have too many people who go for their diplomas. We need a lot more practical people like these agribusiness entrepreneurs I'm talking about. So I'm challenging you, people in the middle class, get at least one daughter or one son to be interested in high value farming, and we will encourage the likes of Pubs, and there are others who will put training institutions that will give them the skills. Let's make use of this pandemic to transition from the mentality of everyone wanting to get a college diploma. And in a way, I think the tragedy that 2.7 million of young people had to drop out of studies is going to be converted into an opportunity of convincing a good number of these dropouts to be farmers of papaya, of all types of vegetables and livestock, as long as we have the training institutes that pubs and company are going to put up.
Well, well, yes, yes. Thank you very much. I am being interrupted here by internet connection. It's good we pre-record it. Now, yeah, in fact, Bernie, Dr. Villegas, we have a learning center here.
Exactly.
We have a learning, you call it the SAGE Learning Center or Sustainable Agriculture and Entrepreneurship Learning Center. We are accredited by the Department of Agriculture, Agriculture Training Institute, and we will be very happy to train. In fact, now I am in the process of training about 4 agripreneurs, but I am funding them on specific activities, on mushroom, on farming, and also on nursery and on organic fertilizer production. And I wish we are developing now agripreneurs. Agripreneurs now is my trust. I don't treat them as employees. So they are now trying. I am the financier, that the agripreneurs, so we relate, we mentor them, and in the process. So my model, my business model that I presented will be very viable because it is holistic. I have considered the risks. The risks involved in this are manageable, provided that we have irrigation. You know, the key here is irrigation. The key here is technology. When I say technology, pre-production technology, production technology, post-harvest technology, down to processing technologies, link up with financing. That is where the OFWs can come. They can contact us, contact Dr. Villegas. We'll be happy to put this model on the ground together. And I assure you, we will package it so well, where the degree of success will be very, very high. Because we will put all the ingredients of success there. And for the students, you are right. Dr. Villegas is right. In fact, I experienced it myself. I am a son of a poor farmer. At least I have never realized that I will reach a point where I will be owning our own farm now and making it productive. And I have contributed a lot, not only within the Land Bank, the Department of Agriculture, University of the Philippines, but globally. So I'm returning full in circle back to the farm because I like to stay here till the end of time. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes. Just to end, let me just share with you the experience that some people had in the 1980s. With good intentions, a group of professionals tried to transfer to the Philippines the family farm school system that worked very well in France and in Spain. But in my opinion, they addressed, with all the good intentions, the wrong market. They addressed children of poor farmers, thinking that they would be able to upgrade them so that they can improve the conditions of the farms of their respective parents. So that is a work-study program. They were put in a school where they were learning in classroom, and then they went back to the farms of their. But precisely, these poor farmers did not have the capital nor the savings to be able to do all these things that Pubs described. Technology in irrigation, technology in fertilizers, and so on and so forth. And so the children got discouraged, and they looked at farming at the level of their poor farmers' parents to be unattractive. So most of them did not really end up in farming. And that's how I insist. Now we have, without abandoning, obviously, the poor farmers, now I insist, we have to address middle income or high income families and to convince some of them to go into high value farming. Not to rice, not to corn, not to coconut, but all these things that we enumerated. Because they can be agri-preneurs, as Pubs mentioned. And they will definitely hire some of the children of the poor farmers, because these people are not going to be the ones actually using their hands. They're the ones who are going to be there as managers. And you will also benefit the poor farmers because some of their children will be hired by these agripreneurs who come from the middle class. So I think this is the new thinking we should address to development community. When you want to help young people, don't focus on the children of poor farmers. They will not be attracted to farming. They will all want to migrate to the barren areas. Try to convince, and I'm not saying it's going to be an easy one, children of middle class and high income families to acquire the necessary skills to go into high value farming because it can be profitable. It can be profitable as investing in internet businesses and so on and so forth. And that is going to be my new campaign. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Villegas and Mr. Pabs Villegas. As promised, it's certainly been an interesting session. But you know what they say about all good things. We're out of time, and we need to wrap up the open forum. Before we finally say goodbye, we've got the post-event survey. We'd like to ask everyone to answer, please. We encourage you to answer the survey to get your certificate of attendance. The survey form will close on March 23, Tuesday at 5 p.m. So make sure you answer it before then. The link is now flashing on your screens uh, and on the Zoom chat. And now we'd like to say thank you very much, Dr. Villegas and Mr. Pabs Villegas, for your presentations today. We'd also like to remind everyone of the CRC International Investors Roadshow, which happens on 25 March. Uh, that's Thursday next week. We'd also like to thank all the participants who attended this afternoon, as well as the CRC and IST digital teams. That closes out our time together today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you can join us for our next event. Stay safe, everyone. Have a good day, and let's all keep working towards a better tomorrow. Bye.
Goodbye to all. See you in our seminar.